September 5th, 1988. Two newly certified cave divers entered Orange Grove Sink in northern Florida for not the first, not the second, but the third dive of the day. Yes, the third dive. So could they exit as easily as they entered? This is the story of Debbie Eaves. A woman who loved diving had just received her cave certification and made a series of wrong decisions. Debbie Eaves had received her basic cave certification on July 3, 1988, just 2 months before this dive. She was new to cave diving. By that time, she'd successfully completed only about 10 cave dives and was eager for more, passionate, and ready to explore. Mark Happe had received his basic cave certification in May of that year. Slightly more experienced than Debbie, but still just as new in the overhead environment. Both were at the beginning of their cave diving journeys. Orange Grove Sink in Suwannee County, Florida, is part of the larger Peacock Springs system, one of the most extensive underwater cave systems in the state. The cave had magnificent splendor with its clear water, limestone formations, and passages winding through frozen rocks. But it was also unforgiving. And which cave would forgive anyway? If you're not cautious, passages can easily become silted. Visibility can drop from crystal clarity to 0 in seconds. And once you enter an overhead environment, there's only one way out. Back the way you came, following the guideline you laid going in. And if you happen to lose that line, then you can be sure the consequences won't be good at all. This is Spooky Nightmare. Here, stories are told not to frighten, but to remind. Late evening on September 5th, Mark and Debbie entered Orange Grove Sink. It was the third dive of the day. They'd completed 2 dives earlier, and now, late in the evening, they were entering again to explore once more. Before entering the water, they discussed their plans with their instructors and other divers who were there. Warnings were indicated by their instructors and other divers present. Debbie had logged about 10 cave dives. She was diving with rental equipment she hadn't used extensively, equipment she didn't know intimately. They were carrying a portable backup light. Everything seemed to be there for cave diving. The plan itself raised concerns. They aimed to go toward Challenge Sink, a more remote section of the cave. They agreed to turn back if silting occurred, but the question was whether they had the experience to recognize when conditions were deteriorating and the discipline to cancel the dive when necessary. Because they'd only just received their certification. The warnings were clear, but they still descended into the cave. The water was initially clear. They passed through passages following the guideline, going deeper into the system. They'd advanced deeper than was appropriate for their experience level. And then suddenly the silting began. Silt, fine sediment settled on the cave floor, is one of the biggest hazards in cave diving. When disturbed by fin kicks, poor buoyancy, or contact with the cave floor, it rises into the water column and creates a cloud that can reduce visibility to 0 in seconds. In an overhead environment without a direct route to the surface, losing visibility almost means losing your life. The only way out is to follow the guideline by touch, slowly, carefully, always maintaining contact with the line. Mark and Debbie noticed the silting. They decided to turn back as planned. They began exiting, tracking their way toward the entrance. But Debbie's primary light was slowly fading. The battery was dying. As they advanced through the increasingly silted passage, the light dimmed, and then it went out. In complete darkness in a silted cave passage, they reached for the backup light. Mark turned it on. The light came on and illuminated the darkness. But during the transition, those few seconds of fumbling with the backup light, orienting themselves, adjusting, they moved away from the guideline. Just a few seconds. In cave diving, the guideline is everything. It's your way in and your way out. It's the only continuous thread connecting you to the entrance. Losing contact with the line is one of the most dangerous things that can happen in a cave. With the new light on, Mark and Debbie turned their attention back to finding the line. They searched, and they found it. Relief came to them. Now there was a line. They could follow it out. They began moving, following back what they believed was the guideline leading to the entrance. But there was no verification that it was the original exit line. In complex cave systems, especially in areas with multiple passages or junction points, there can be multiple guidelines. Some are main lines, some are side lines, some are lines connecting different sections to each other. And in zero visibility, in the stress of a deteriorating situation, when you lose the line and find it again, there's no guarantee you found the same line you were following before. So did they know this? Cave diving training emphasizes that when you lose and regain a line in zero visibility, you must verify which line you're on before proceeding. There are techniques for this, following the line in both directions to identify markers, checking for familiar features, confirming direction. But in the chaos and urgency of the moment, these verification steps weren't implemented. Mark and Debbie were following a line, but it wasn't their line. It was leading them away from the main exit route, toward passages they hadn't planned to enter, toward a place where their gas supplies and experience couldn't save them. At some point, they separated. The reason isn't exactly known, but probably, whether visibility, stress, unfamiliar route, or a combination of all three, Mark and Debbie lost contact with each other. In cave diving, losing your buddy in zero visibility is a nightmare scenario. You can't see them. You can't call to them. You can only follow the line and hope they're doing the same. Mark followed the line he was on. Eventually, he reached an exit and surfaced alive. Debbie followed a different line and couldn't surface. Before we get into the next part, I want to show you something quick. According to the channel statistics, over 90% of people watching this video are not subscribed. If you enjoy these real cave incident stories, subscribing and liking really helps support the continuation of this content. Now let's get into the next part. Search and rescue divers entered the cave. Debbie Eaves was later recovered from Orange Grove Sink. She had drowned. The wrong guideline had led her to a different, deeper section of the cave where she couldn't find the way out. The National Speleological Society, Cave Diving Section, NSS-CDS, documented the incident in their 1988 Accident Analysis Report. Looking more carefully at the incident, several contributing factors became clear. The third dive of the day. Late evening hours. Warnings voiced by their instructors were not heeded. Debbie with about 10 cave dives and rental equipment. She pushed her limits quite a bit. If you were in her shoes, could you make a third dive of the day with equipment that wasn't even yours? But the most important breaking point occurred during those few seconds when they changed lights. That's when they moved away from the guideline. That's when they lost the only thing that could safely get them out of the cave. Just a few seconds cost everything. And when they found a line again, they didn't verify it was the right one before following it. Remember, caves don't forgive. Cave diving training emphasizes a fundamental principle: continuous contact with the guideline. Never let go, never move away. If you lose the line, stop, search methodically, and verify you found the correct line before proceeding. Orange Grove Sink is still a popular dive site. Experienced cave divers regularly dive to explore, navigate its passages safely, enjoy its beauty. What happened to Debbie Eaves wasn't random. Every small decision she made brought her death faster. The lesson in Debbie's death: cave diving has rules for a reason. Limits aren't arbitrary. Training shouldn't be taken lightly. Warnings from more experienced divers aren't for your harm. They're to keep you alive. Debbie Eaves had about 10 cave dives. She was diving with rental equipment. Warnings about the dive were voiced. And on September 5th, 1988, on the third dive of a long day, in a silted passage with a dead light, She lost the guideline, found a different line, and followed it without verification. The cave didn't care that she was passionate, didn't care that she just received her certification, didn't care that she had a plan to turn back if conditions deteriorated. Her story became part of the records, a reminder that verification protocols in cave diving exist for a reason. When you lose and regain a line in zero visibility, the few seconds it takes to verify which line you're on can be the difference between life and death. Debbie Eaves' case happened because guideline verification wasn't done, because of an unverified line, because of a preventable error. But not every cave kills its victims this way. Sometimes the line is correct, gas supply is adequate, equipment works exactly as it should, and yet someone doesn't return. On July 19, 1988, in the Ottawa River system in Quebec, during a dive camp, 2 divers followed their guideline 90 meters into a shallow cave. They explored, they investigated, they turned to exit, but one surfaced, the other couldn't. This wasn't a story about losing the line, it was something else entirely. But that story is the subject of our next video. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.